Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
What can we expect from the cattle markets in the months ahead? We've got your spring outlook from the experts at CattleFax. Plus, we'll discuss NCBA's research into red meat yield and what the latest numbers mean for U.S. cattle producers.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. The first day of spring was a few weeks ago, which signals a shift towards warmer weather and improving pasture conditions for cattle producers. So how does this change in the season also impact cattle markets? Joining us now to talk about this is Terrell Platt with CattleFax. Terrell, there are typically some seasonal trends that occur in the springtime, and do we anticipate those same seasonal trends playing out this year?
We do. I really start with beef demand first when we think about this spring period. As weather warms, you get into grilling season that tends to be very supportive to the beef complex. Also, when you look at the fed cattle supply, looking forward towards especially May and June, both of those factors look to come together to be supportive of a higher trending market as we get deeper into the spring. Relative to the calf market as well, we've been off to a record start here again this year. Prices on a U.S. average basis near $350 a hundredweight. Those do tend to continue to move higher into March and April, with grass demand getting to support those prices to get those cattle ready to turn out for the spring and summer. Lastly, I look at the cold cow market as well. It's also been very, very strong to start the year, with mainly a function of tighter supplies and strong demand for 90s lean trimmings. They're well on pace to establish a new record here in the next several months as well.
Cow-calf producers took home pretty big paychecks this past year. What's the outlook for cow-calf producers as we move into 2025?
It looks to be another very favorable year. Prices are obviously off to a strong start, and we do expect that to carry into a very solid summer video auction. And just where we are from a cyclical standpoint relative to cattle supplies, that should limit the magnitude of the fall break that typically occurs in the calf market as you get into the fall run.
You know, there's some feedlots that are not quite as full as they've been in the past. What's your blink on the overall outlook for feedlots?
Probably the biggest risk from that perspective is going to be getting that inventory into those yards, especially as you go through 2025 and into 2026. But relative to just performance in the fed cattle market, it's truly been off to a very impressive start. When you look at January especially, already notching a new record high near $209 per hundredweight. And when we look at the demand levels that we're seeing and that supply dynamic as you go further into the springtime, looks very likely that we'll be able to match or even exceed those levels as we go forward as well.
Planters will start rolling soon across much of the country. Tell us what your predictions are in terms of crop production.
We do expect to see an increase in corn acres, especially considering the spread between new crop corn and soybean futures. That does indicate that we should see more acres planted relative to corn. However, with the drier weather conditions forecast for the summer timeframe, yield may be below trend line, but it's still likely to be a new all-time record. That should leave stocks to use for corn at a very comfortable position and limit sustained gains in terms of prices. We will lose a little bit of soybean acres if we're going to increase corn acres. At the same time, though, the demand for soybeans hasn't been as robust as it has been for corn, so we may not see the same type of price appreciation relative to beans.
And certainly one big factor is hay production, and I don't know about everybody else, but there's still a pretty good stock of hay up where I'm from. We'll see how that plays out if it doesn't give us any moisture. But what's your sense and outlook for hay production and hay supplies into 25?
We're certainly in a lot better position than when we think back to, say, 2022, when stocks were at the tightest level since the 1950s. Okay. We've increased that stock over the last couple years. And although maybe the weather conditions aren't going to be the most ideal for us, at the same time, we've built stocks back to a more comfortable spot. And we've continued to see a liquidation in the beef cow inventory, where we're at the tightest level since 1961. So that reduces a little bit of the demand, even though we aren't expecting as strong of a production this year relative to hay prices. The other thing that I look at on hay is it does tend to have a very solid correlation to corn as well, where we don't expect to see a huge amount of price increases that are sustained for corn. That probably reflects the trend for hay as being a flatter trend for 2025 as well.
Gotcha. And as we know, everything's always dependent on weather. So, Terrell, thank you so much for coming and sharing those insights with us.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, if you're looking for top-notch beef industry research, information, and analysis, then check out the experts at CattleFax. You could visit their website at CattleFax.com for the tools you need to make profitable decisions. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll explain how red meat yield research helps contribute to a more sustainable beef industry. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
National Cattlemen's Beef Association would like to thank our gold partners. Their support allows us to continue being the trusted leader and definitive voice of the U.S. cattle and beef industry.
You always know where this one is. But what about this one? Or this one? Imagine knowing your machines the way you know your cattle, where they are and what they need. Data like that could make a difference. You can make better decisions for more efficiency, consistency, productivity. That's the power of technology. Get started with Operations Center today.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest and largest national cattle industry organization working to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattlemen, email updates in the NCBA Beef Bulletin, plus big discounts only for NCBA members. Join by calling 866-233-3872 or online at ncba.org.
One way that NCBA works to grow beef demand is through checkoff-funded research into things like beef quality and sustainability. Another key area of study is red meat yield. Here to talk about those efforts is Jessica Lancaster, NCBA's Senior Director of Product Quality and Safety Research. Jessica, let's begin with the basics. What is red meat yield, and why is it important to the industry?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As we think about how we grade cattle, there's really two ways. Quality grade being the first, and that's the one that our producers and even our consumers are really familiar with. The second is yield grade, and that's looking at how much product we're getting out of an animal. This is very much less known to our producers and certainly not known by stakeholders of the industry, and really the area where we have the greatest area for improvement to understand how much product or red meat are we getting from each animal that we produce.
Very good. And why is it so important to have checkoff funded dollars helping to fund research in this effort?
Yeah, the checkoff plays a really important role. If we look at the beef industry long range plan, we see that it's actually called out in a bullet point on there, which is really cool. We see that it's important to have technology, but also really utilize science to grow the understanding in the area. If we think about our product quality research program, it really has a rich history in looking at how can we find solutions for our producers to really get the value they deserve based off of the composition and yield of their cattle.
So I'm curious, what is the current data telling us about how these cattle are yielding, and how does that compare to previous years?
Yeah, you might be a little surprised to know that the system we use today of yield grade was based off of studies in the early 1950s and 1960s. Cattle were very different at that time. They would be the height of about our belt buckles.
Exactly.
And it was 150 head that we used to base the system off of. We all know that things like management, genetics, and production have changed. So we've done checkoff-funded research along the way to look at what are today's cattle yielding, knowing that yield grade is still directionally correct, but there's a tremendous opportunity to really capture the true yield and pay producers for the value of the red meat yield these cattle are producing.
We've seen record heavy carcass weights, and as we've grown that carcass weight, we've made fatter cattle. I'm curious, as we improve yield grades going forward, how do we make certain that we don't slide back in terms of quality grade?
I think that's a great call out. As we've worked in this effort, we know that keeping quality grade high is a non-negotiable. And so as we work to increase yield, or really the measurement around yield, it's important that we still have that focus on quality. We've seen through management selection that we can really make tremendous progress in traits. So providing producers with feedback in terms of yield will allow us to keep quality high, but also really increase the yield and payment of yield we're seeing coming out of these cattle.
You bet. And as I say, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And so the first step is getting the measurement correctly. Thank you for your leadership in this effort.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, if you want to stay up to date on NCBA's efforts in areas like red meat yield, sustainability, product quality, and nutrition, just visit the website beefresearch.org. Coming up, we'll dig into the relationship between corn and cattle and why it's so important to the long-term success of both industries. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Grazing and pasture management is really the critical first step in our cow-calf operation. Without good quality pastures, good quality forage, it'd be really tough to make it with a cow-calf operation.
Did you know you can get reimbursed for attending cattle industry educational events? The Rancher Resilience Grant helps cattle producers attend valuable programs such as Cattlemen's College and Stockmanship and Stewardship training sessions. Local, state, and national events qualify for the grant, and successful applicants can receive money back to help cover registration fees and hotel expenses. To apply for the Rancher Resilience Grant, go to ncba.org and click on the Producer tab.
This beef quality assurance tip is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Hi, Jolie Fitzsimons here to talk to you today about the Beef Quality Assurance Program and our online BQA modules. The BQA program is an important part of the beef industry. It helps to build consumer confidence and ensures that we're taking care of our animals the right way. The online modules are a great way for producers to stay up to date on their knowledge and certifications. We have 3 courses: Cow-Calf, Stalker Backgrounder, and Feed Yard. All 3 of these courses are also available in Spanish. They're free online and take about 2 to 3 hours to complete. If you don't have that time, the great thing about the modules is that you can come back to them later, as it saves your progress. Our states also host in-person trainings. You can find more about these in-person trainings and our online modules at bqa.org.
The Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Well, one of the sessions here at CattleCon 25 in San Antonio, Texas was Partners in Profitability, the Value of U.S. Exports. And joining us is one of the presenters, Colorado farmer and National Corn Growers Association board member Troy Snyder. Let's dive right into it. Give us the meat and potatoes of your presentation.
Well, we just talked to the audience about the important fact of why exports mean so much to us. So one out of every 4 bushels of corn is raised for export when it comes to exports in protein. So when we sit there, you look at the national corn crop, we talk trade, 13 to 17% of our national corn crop is traded. But when that is added in the belly of cattle and hogs and in chicken, it grows exponentially. When we get those exports going across the border with our friends from the United States Meat Export Federation. And when you consider that 95% of the world's population lives outside of our borders, that's where we're going to grow our plate at, if so to speak. That's where we're going to feed everybody at. And that is why it is so important for us to partner with the United States Meat Export Federation, along with the United States U.S. Grains Export Council, as to how do we push our product across the seas. And those 2 organizations can't lobby, but NCBA and NCGA can work on their behalf to make sure that they have their funding from Washington, D.C. to get those products across the sea.
Well, bottom line too, Troy, when we're talking about these partners in profitability, not only are we creating delicious protein for our friends around the world, but we're also creating more value for those livestock we're raising right here at home.
Yes. You look at the dollars that we add back, the dollar per head that exports add, and then the cents per bushel that it brings back to us on the corn crop is invaluable. But the other thing about it is I pull into 4M feeders in Stratton, Colorado, and I unload a load of corn, and I'm excited because we're creating jobs here in the United States that exports a product. You take it back home to Colorado. For me, our largest export of any product is beef in the state of Colorado. By far, it outweighs anything else we move across the border. And our number 1 customer is Canada. So we have to have our beef checkoff and our corn checkoff not lobbying necessarily, but educating back in Washington, D.C. as to why it is so important that we have fair and free trade.
And lastly, I mean, it just seems as the years go by, these relationships keep getting stronger and stronger, which is good for both producers and consumers.
It is. And I want to just thank the National Cattlemen's Beef Association for inviting us here. This is my 5th year in a row that I've attended CattleCon, and it is a relationship that, it's pretty easy to fund somebody when they come to you with such great ideas as to how do we make our two products better. So with that, I just wanted to give the NCBA a huge shout out. It's been a pleasure working with them over the last few years.
Absolutely. Again, we've been talking about partners in profitability, the value of U.S. exports with Colorado Farmer and National Corn Growers Association board member Troy Snyder. Bottom line, just another great example about the value of those exports to America's farmers and ranchers.
Given today's high prices, market volatility, and the inherent risk in our business, risk management has never been more important. And I'm here today with some risk management professionals from Specialty Risk Insurance Company. Kevin Charleston is the owner and CEO of that organization. Kevin, tell us just a little bit about Specialty Risk Insurance.
We have a unique opportunity to serve agriculture today. And one of the great opportunities we have is we do the property, the liability, workers' compensation. We have a full health insurance team. And then we have a cattle insurance team as well to go in and we do your cattle for windstorms, lightning, hail, flooding, transportation. They tip a truck over. We're involved with a lot of cargo insurance. But then on the flip side, a few years ago, we really got involved with livestock risk protection. Yes. And that livestock risk protection has been, it's been a great savior for a lot of our yearling guys, our cow-calf guys. You can do an unborn calf this spring for next fall or almost a year from now. Why not be out front of this market? We're at all-time highs. Why not be involved? Why not be engaged with what's going on and give yourself a chance? One more turn on a set of cattle has always been a pretty big deal in the livestock industry when it's up.
That's exactly right. Now, you're based in Carthage, Missouri, but you really do business across the country. How do you do that?
About 45 states. 45. We do business all over the United States. We have a couple agents, one in California, one in Arizona, 3 or 4 in Texas, one in Oklahoma City. We have another office at the Oklahoma City Stockyards Exchange Building. We got one in Carthage, one in Fairfield, Texas. So, it's just a phone call away. When's the last time you drove into your insurance agent's office? You just call, take a text. But we advertise nationally and we engage nationally. We do a lot of, we were just doing some international cattle a minute ago. Standing over here, some people walked up, we were helping them with that. And a lot of international business as well.
And the biggest thing is you understand agriculture.
80% of the people that work in our office understand agriculture. And we were just talking about the fact that 30 people in our office are under 30 years old and they all grew up in agriculture. So we've been really working hard to get that younger crowd to come in there and they're really involved in agriculture and understand it. So you call in our office, you don't have to explain what a cow is or yearling or, how the equine insurance needs to be taken care of. You call in, we understand it's a natural conversation. It's not like you have to educate somebody in New York about what you're doing. So.
Now, you mentioned LRP, and I know you've been marketing a lot about your LRP services on RFD, Cowboy Channel, lots of places. Right. But tell us why you think that's so important and what the value is of considering that right now.
We're at these levels of this amount of investment. We were just talking about that earlier. The amount of investment in, a 500-pound calf's $4 right now. It's year 2,000, 2,100 on a little old calf. That could just as easily be worth $1,000. There's going to be a point he is, and hopefully it's 3 or 4 or 5 years, or whenever the bell curve makes the curve back down. But you're a full. You can protect that calf for the life of him pretty easy for 20, 30, 40, $50, whatever level you want to buy it at, and then you're out there and you protect it, and you don't even have to pay for it till after the fact. Either you get a check or a bill at the end, and it's a pretty simple thing to do, and we work hard at that. Our guys. All feed cattle that are involved with that and sell it at the office or have been around feeding cattle and yearlings and calves. And we try and really work hard at people to understand the business because that can get pretty tricky and there's a lot of moving parts right now. We were doing a lot of cattle here last night, kind of the second day, a little bit of a downturn in the market, $7 or $8 over 2 days. I haven't even seen today. We've been so busy here. Yeah. But they're all like, oh, we better get back in there. Better at least get out there a little ways and at least do half of them. Yeah.
Giving you the opportunity to live to fight another day, regardless of what happens.
That's exactly right.
That's great. Thank you, Kevin, for all you do for so many agricultural professionals. And if you'd like more information, please go to specialtyriskinsuranceagency.com. Still ahead, we'll introduce you to a cattle producer who is helping to direct the work of the Federation of State Beef Councils. Stay with us.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll be part of the nation's oldest and largest national cattle industry organization that has a professional team working in Washington, D.C. on issues that matter to cattle-producing families nationwide. Don't stay on the sidelines. Make your voice heard by joining NCBA today at the website ncba.org.
This beef quality assurance tip is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Hi, I'm Jesse Fulton. Today I want to talk to you about transportation. Each year, millions of cattle are transported across the United States. Whether it be a bumper pull trailer, a gooseneck trailer, or a cattle pot going down the roadway, these act as big billboards for the beef industry. So in order to ensure consumer confidence, we need to ensure our animals are fit for transport. When assessing fitness for transport of our cattle, we are looking at three things: the health status of the animal, to ensure that we are not causing any biosecurity issues, the mobility score of the animal, and the body condition score of the animal, to ensure these animals are able to withstand the rigors of transport. To find out more about transportation, the Beef Quality Assurance Program, or the Beef Quality Assurance Transportation Program, go to bqa.org.
The Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
My name is Andy Kellum, and I am the Federation of State Beef Councils. I live at Hobson, Montana. Married, have 3 kids. I manage a feedlot, stocker operation, and farm in central Montana. I was born and raised in southeast Idaho, and I've been basically in the cattle industry my whole life. As far as getting involved in the Federation, I became a member of the Montana Beef Council about 8 years ago. And I'll tell you, about 8 years ago, I knew about that much about what happened with the beef checkoff. You know, the value of being a volunteer leader is that we all have input on the process. All of the people that are here, that are producers from all over the United States, we all have input on what happens at the Federation with our checkoff dollars. With the Federation of State Beef Councils, we can come together, we can provide input, but we can work in one direction together at the same time. The collective effort together moving forward so that each state is not recreating each one of these programs, I believe that's one of the real drivers of the impact of the Federation. We use Federation services extensively. We don't have to go out and hire a web designer. We don't have to hire a graphic designer. Those things are available to us right here at the Federation of State Beef Councils, and the content and the quality that we're able to get is second to none. Even after 60 years, I believe the Federation continues to be vital because we have a vastly different consumer today than we did 60 years ago. The Federation of State Beef Councils really helps us understand that consumer and then find a way to get our product in front of that consumer in a way that encourages him to purchase our product. At the end of the day, we're putting more beef on more plates. That is the job of the Federation of State Beef Councils. You know, my message is always to the producer, just because you don't see it, just because you don't touch it, doesn't mean that it's not working for you every day. So that's one of the challenges that we have with our industry. You know, we're widespread, we're independent. If you have a question about what's happening with your dollar, you need to come and see the Federation of State Beef Councils at work. It's completely driven by producer input. Grassroots input drives the program. And so at the Federation of State Beef Councils, we're doing everything we can to ensure that we get the best bang for our buck. My hope for the future of the cattle industry is that through some of this work that we're doing with the Federation of State Beef Councils, that we maintain a viable industry. I would like my kids to have the same opportunity that I've had to find a career and a path in an industry that we truly love. And I believe that the Federation of State Beef Councils and the work of the Beef Checkoff are going to help us maintain an industry that's viable for the next generation.
That wraps up this edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.